So, Christina, would you please talk about how climate change has affected your life since you were younger?
What I've seen is that these strong drops has happened more frequently as I was growing up. One of the particular things that I've noticed as well, and that it's more pattern as I am now that I am visiting my hometown only sporadically, once or twice a year, is that seasons have changed.
So that when we were growing up, floods were low. Now, floods are all over in Accra. When it rains, people struggle to move from one location to the other, and the floods have been destroying properties and taking out lives.
What used to be an abnormal cyclone is now these hectic storms that come every year. They come sometimes twice a year.
Fish fly season is starting sooner and it's finishing later. So not only is that leading to loss of life, livelihood, habitation for local wildlife, it's having big impact for extended periods in the year on air quality.
Y se secaron las presas también. Se secaron las presas, se secaron los ríos. Entonces empezamos a tener un problema que de verdad nunca en la vida yo había vivido. O sea, tengo 52 años viviendo aquí y nunca me había pasado eso. Tener que estar restringidos con el tema del agua.
While we were kids, a lot of open wells and was potable water. That's not the case anymore. Either they have got dried or they got polluted.
It
is going every day high temperature, someday suddenly fall. So which is impacting again human life and the agriculture sector.
现在这不说一，然后跟以前的3米5左右，不得有20年水位高，都是干旱，每一年都是5米，有些干旱的地方就是说这个瀑布已经干湿了过夜。
Here used to stay people, our neighbors, but because of heavy landslides, sort of being washed away with stones, an incident where 4 people died in.
Before the flood is not came, this village is very good indeed. We grow the crop and we keep the animal and so many activities we done in this village. And the time when the flood come, it was affected our animal as our animal are die because there is no grass. And also the food we eat, the crop are destroyed by what? By the flood. And also people are suffering by other diseases which are caused by the flood, and some children are malnourished. Some are in the hospital now, and some are die.
So, Omar, how do you think climate change might affect my life in the future?
Well, I think you have your expected impacts. So sea level rise, temperature rise, changing in rainfall intensity and patterns, but I think the scarier part is the unknowns, because of course climate change is a systemic issue, and these biophysical systems as well as the human systems are really complex, and changes can have waves throughout a system, and you can't really tell sometimes what those changes or impacts might look like.
So there are huge challenges also with people fleeing countries where climate change has a massive impact, and we could see it just with people fleeing from their country because of war. Many more will follow because of not being able to live anymore in their country. So that will be a huge challenge.
Anybody who's got resources, if you're reasonably well off and you can afford to protect yourself, it won't be so bad. But the people who will really have a bad time are the people who just have got nowhere to go, no way to help themselves.
And if you look at the location of your house, is closer to the beach. So high sea rise might wipe away your house. So a time will come, you go and you can't find your house anymore.
JP, tell me what worries you about your future with this climate change crisis that we're facing.
I worry about when water is going to run out in so many water-scarce nations. I worry about the psychological and physical effects that that's going to have on people. I worry about the conflicts that are going to ensue, about the mass migration.
If I wanted kids, I'd feel guilty about having children, and I think that's something that a lot of people in my generation feel is, you know, we're already all quite hopeless about the future and about the climate, and I would feel horrible bringing more people into that equation.
I'm worried that I'm not going to get to live as full of a life as some other people do, because obviously climate change just has so many impacts, and that all of this lovely wildlife we have around us today is no longer going to be here. I don't see why not everyone's on board, because I mean, who wouldn't want a better world?
Due to the heavy rains we are getting, we are everywhere you go you find stagnant water, of which that water is the breeding place of mosquitoes, and that is malaria to the society, to the people around, cholera and so on. And then another thing, when it overrains heavily, you find the rain is washing away the soil, the topsoil, which is the fertile soil. So in some years to come, we shall fail to get where to do farming from.
I think there's a real danger of kind of nationalism and kind of we'll protect ourselves. You end up in this haves and have-not society where the have is a livable environment, and that's a scary future.
How do you feel about the world that you're inheriting? I feel angry about the world I'm inheriting. When you were growing up, you had dreams, you had things you wanted to do, and you had the privilege of actually building that life for yourself, and I want to do that as well. And I feel like the actions of your generations and generations before you are stopping my dreams from coming true.
I feel very frustrated and also worried about the future my generation is inheriting. We have been left a world where people are putting profit over people, and where we have stopped listening to First Nations and Indigenous voices on caring for land.
Those that have known about this for a very long time have purposefully made sure to keep it under wraps. And so I feel an overwhelming sense of injustice, but an even more overwhelming sense of sadness, because it's the people that have contributed the least to this problem that will be facing the most severe and cataclysmic consequences.
Avia, what are your hopes for the future?
Well, my hopes are, if we at all act on the climate changes, one, forests will grow because we shall cut one tree and plant 10, or 2. We shall have clean water bodies. Right now we are having a lot of pollution, like air pollution. So if we act upon the climate changes, trust me, we shall have a better planet.
Well, I think my biggest hopes is that we actually, for all the problems, we already have the solution. I mean, there are super intelligent scientists out there who already, I mean, they predict things so accurately, and they also provide a solution to it. So my hopes is actually that politicians and decision makers really wake up and really get pressured into, like, you have to do something and you have to implement the solutions that are already there.
And I hope that by working together, which still boils down to intergenerational solidarity and having all generations work together to prepare a better future, the future that we want.
And I think that people who are actually facing the consequences of this crisis should be leading the decision making instead, especially the young people whose future is at stake.
I hope for my children to be able to know the planet even a little bit as I know it today. I hope then they can get to walk in a forest, that they can smell the forest, the soil, everything, that they get to live all of that.
And I think that we're in that tipping point where the decisions that we make today will give the future generations the possibility to know a forest, to walk to a forest, to smell the forest, or just to have stories of that there was something that used to be the Amazon and that used to have an incredible river, and just have that knowledge through stories, and not actually being able to experience the beauty of the planet that we live in.
And Deidre, we're heading into COP27, which is, the global gathering of countries talking about our sort of climate change agenda. So what would you as a young person like to say to policymakers and decision makers about your future?
I would say we need to change the way we eat. The Earth cannot continue to sustain such a large population of mammals who eat such large quantities of meat. We need to change the way that we travel. There are too many planes, especially short-haul flights that do occur, where people could travel in more sustainable ways.
More humanitarian aid needs to be given to people who have been affected by climate disasters, and we should listen to them also.
Es importante que los gobiernos de todos los países tomen acción y no solamente sean acciones afirmativas las que se impongan para frenar el cambio climático, sino que también existan leyes permanentes que obliguen tanto a las empresas como a la sociedad en general a cuidar nuestros recursos naturales.
The action that you're taking now is insufficient. I think that policymakers and decision makers are not realizing that the world is what we have built everything on, and if we don't have the earth and the earth is uninhabitable, then we have nothing. Like 2050 is an arbitrary deadline. It's not doing anything apart from allowing us as like a species to procrastinate our own survival.
We don't act now, actually it's going to be much harder for us to make a positive impact or to mitigate these things in the next generation, because everything would have be set in stone already.
If we all could just unify our ideas into this one goal, we would make lasting changes that help everyone.
If they keep failing to take this seriously, it will destroy the possibility for people to continue life on this earth, and it will destroy their own kids' possibility to achieve a life they want to live.
I don't want them to feel empowered or hopeful. I want them to feel as terrified as I am right now, and I want them to feel terrified enough to stop this.
Our lives are at risk. We are going to die so soon. We are not going to live like you have lived. But if at all they would act, I just hope they can act so fast and set the strict rules and work according to them. Then there, we shall live.
A lot of clinics have been full of malnourished children. We need to do something, and we must start now.
We are with you, but we are looking for that bold leadership that puts self-interest on the other side.
People and lives and families need your help, because we're not taking this seriously enough, and we need to take climate change and the emergency that represents seriously enough.
And as you're sitting down in those negotiations, and as you go back to your country and try to plan public policy on climate change, keep in mind that responsibility may not be to your voters, it's with your family. And what do you want to tell your daughters, your nephews in 10 years when they ask you, what were you doing when you went to the COP? What answer do you want to give them?
Take action, because our planet is dying around us.
me and my generation, we're taking more action than they are, even though that they have the science that we don't. What are they doing? They're just sat around in meetings deciding what they could do. They're not actually doing it.
We are sick and tired of waiting while we see the impacts of climate change around us. And so I call on leaders at COP to be making the decisions to fight for us and to fight for our future, and to those currently being affected by climate change.